Thank you for keeping it on Ed. My name is KC, and in studio today I've got Baba Amani Olubanjo Buntu. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
So I have here a bound copy of your thesis, your master's thesis. It's titled Rape, Rage and Culture, African Men and Cultural Conditions for Justification of and Sanctions Against Rape. And I believe this won the best thesis at the Department of Education at the University of South Africa. Is that correct?
That's right, yes.
Okay, quite a heavy topic, this topic of rape. Perhaps let's get into it. What are the statistics?
Well, the statistics are a little bit difficult to work with because there's underreporting, and also in terms of those cases that are reported, some people get discouraged in the process because sometimes the legal process is very long, and some people, mainly also because of the social stigma it carries to accuse somebody or get somebody arrested for rape, some people decide to then withdraw their cases. So it's difficult to say, but in South Africa, a common number is to say 70,000 rapes in a year. In other countries, the statistics disagree a lot, but we know that there's alarming rates of rape in many countries throughout the continent.
Wow. So that's upwards of, let me say, 500 to over 1,000 rapes per day.
It's a lot.
Depressing.
It's a lot.
So how is rape defined? What is rape?
I think rape is any unwanted approach or touch, or it can be physical. It's mostly physical, coercion or force towards a sexual encounter. And it's important to say that it doesn't have to be a complete sexual act. It can be initiating that, it can be to start that, it can be to try to or attempt to commit that towards somebody who doesn't want that.
So even within marriages, there is rape?
Oh, definitely. And this is a touchy topic because, you know, there's an understanding around the continent that me as a man, if my wife does not want to sleep with me, she will have to. That's her job. That's her role.
Especially with the dowry thing. I paid dowry,
true.
so...
True.
Yeah.
But my point, and this is what comes out in the thesis as well, that we have many misunderstandings. Many of the cultural traits that Africa once used to hold, we tend to misinterpret them, and maybe increasingly, as men living now in a very patriarchal society, we have tried to make these rules or regulations suit us more than anything.
Yeah. And there's this this makes me sick to my stomach.
Completely.
This notion that raping a child is a cure to HIV.
Yes.
It's quite common here in South Africa, and I suppose in pockets of the continent. Perhaps explore that. What were your findings in your research?
I don't want to say that it's common, but it does happen, and it is very, even if it just happened once, it's very disturbing. I don't want to say that it's common. It's not something that most men necessarily believe, but there are some notions, and I think this again is an example of an ancient notion that has been reinterpreted. That, for instance, there's a purity around a child. For instance, if you have a certain sickness, you should spend some time with the child. You should invite the child into your home because the innocence of a child will kind of bring that healing back. And that's a completely different understanding than to actually force yourself on a child or do anything.
And sometimes it's kids of a few months old.
It's babies. And we mustn't even call this culture. This borders on sickness, meaning that it's a completely misunderstood understanding of self and also the child that you are committing this against. Because that means in that moment and maybe in your personality, you have absolutely no empathy, absolutely no understanding of what is self, what is boundary, what is, and I think it's important also to the whole notion of rape. We need to exclude that from even understanding sex, because there's some people who think that if pornography and availability of movies and prostitution can alleviate rape statistics. Rape is not sex. Men who rape, they are not looking for sex. They're looking for power.
I was going to ask that question because I was watching the movie 12 Years a Slave. You might have seen it.
Yes.
And I see the slave owner is raping this woman that he despises, a slave who he despises, believes is beneath him. Why is he raping? If he thinks that she's so, debased and all that, why rape her? Is it pleasure or, obviously you have sex with someone you desire. This is person you don't believe is desirable, so why rape them? Well, so is rape about sex?
It's not about sex, and that's where, sex in its pure form is about life. We want to have sex with somebody because we want life, we want to produce life, we want to reproduce life. For some reason, in some, and I think it's important to say some, we mustn't talk about that this is all African men. Most African men do not rape. But those who do normally come from a very violent background, normally come from a background where their sense of self, sense of empathy, sense of understanding what is right and what is wrong has been violated. That doesn't mean it's okay for them to rape, but it does explain something about the levels of violence. And it's interesting that you mentioned the notion of enslavement, which of course changed the whole understanding of culture around the continent. This continent has been so violated for such a long time that we have become used to violence. Even sometimes, me as an African man looking at you, I don't really see a human. I just see somebody who is lower than humanity. And in a twisted way, sometimes, whether it's violence or sexual violence, that almost like permits me to do things that I wouldn't do to other people that I actually regard as human. So it has a lot to do with also what has happened to our collective psyche. Doesn't mean that all of us rape, of course, but it means that that is one aspect of the collective pain that many of us carry.
Okay, Baba, as we wrap up, how does Africa compared to the rest of the world in terms of rape?
I think we talk a lot about rape in Africa, and we should, but it doesn't mean that rape doesn't happen in other parts of the world. In England, in Australia, in the United States, rape statistics are horrific and sometimes much higher than they are in many African countries.
You heard the man, Baba Buntu. I mean, this is a topic we can talk about all day. He's written a whole thesis about it, the issue of rape in Africa. It's something we have to talk about. That's a message from him. It's something we have to understand and find ways of alleviating. Thank you for staying tuned to Ed. We've got less heavy topics for you coming up. If you have any questions, send us an email. Our email address is ed@urbanbrew.co.za.